Hey everyone, it's Natalie Bensavanga, and I am back with Facts Over Fear. And one of my favorite people is joining me, independent journalist Nick Valencia. How are you today, Nick?
I'm doing so well. I'm grateful that you're having me back here. I didn't mess it up last time.
No, you did not mess it up last time. I appreciate all the work that you do. I follow you, of course, on all of your different platforms and right here on Substack. And I really wanted to dig in because honestly, Nick, between the times that you and I connect, which is pretty often, it's like been a cadence
Yeah,
of every couple weeks. I feel like a million things explode in the interim, and we're both just sort of constantly being fed from a fire hose of information. So we've got a lot of things that we want to cover today, and we're going to really hone in on ICE and accountability and flock. As lawmakers demand greater oversight of ICE, another violent incident is fueling questions about accountability. I just came across this, you guys, today. So in Colorado, an employee of the GEO Group, which is the private company that operates the Aurora ICE Processing Center, was arrested on July 16th after allegedly shooting and injuring a woman just hours after she participated in a protest outside the facility. Now, authorities are saying the employee was off duty, and the GEO Group has placed him on unpaid administrative leave during this investigation. Now, this incident is coming off the heels of two fatal ICE operations just in the past 2 weeks, with which Nick and I have both been covering, one in
yeah.
Houston and another in Maine. A group of growing senators here is calling now for mandatory body cameras, greater transparency around ICE's use of force, stronger officer vetting, and an independent review of the agency's policies. Now, taken together, these incidents, in my mind, are, of course, raising much larger questions, including what does accountability look like when immigration enforcement turns deadly, or when people connected to that system are being now accused of violence both on and off duty. Independent journalist Nick Valencia is joining me today. We're going to be separating the facts from the politics to ask whether public oversight is keeping pace with one of the most powerful law enforcement agencies in the country that was actually not ever really framed as such. It was supposed to be an administrative space. Nick, let's just start with the latest developments.
Yeah.
Hearing all of this, in particular, what happened in Colorado, because that's the newest one that I've come across, at least. What are your initial thoughts and reactions?
I mean, I'm not surprised at this point. It seemed as though the agency was getting a lot more aggressive. And from what I saw in Delaney, at Delaney Hall, it's like this patience or this layer or even perception, the optics of the discretion that they once had, that they once sort of, you could give them the benefit of the doubt that they were leaning into that in good faith.
Mm-hmm.
It's gone now. And you're also seeing, Natalie, you're also seeing the consequences of hiring people that are unqualified, that
Mm-hmm.
just like not even underqualified. They're not qualified to be there. I don't know if enough training would even get them there. I mean, think about the people that were involved on the other end. Not only did they never see accountability, but now, thankfully, we're starting to see stories come out, including from the ex-wife of the man, one of the people involved in the shooting in Maine, right? I mean, he was telling her and other family members to lie about his character. It seemed, had a violent past. And it's like, you see this sort of recycling of people in law enforcement, whether they're corrections officers who do wrong or local police officers that transfer around to different departments. Now in ICE, zeroing in on this, you're seeing people now that are just not qualified for the job and the consequences.
I have to comment here quickly because I'm often producing in my brain, as I know you do when you're doing your show as well. And
Yeah.
the thing that I love about doing this show with you is I was literally going to bring that up because it popped into my head and then you said it. So it's like, you guys, we're like right here, okay, with the synergy. Um, and I couldn't agree more though. I think we're seeing the limitations of what is happening with this organization and
Yeah.
the terror that they are spreading like wildfire, and also the whiplash. Because last week, after everything unfolded with Houston and Maine, the Trump administration said, "Okay, we're stopping the the safety stops in vehicles. And
Yeah,
then
we're
within
stopping the
24
vehicle
hours, it was
stops,
like,
you know? Yeah.
yeah. And then they pulled back on that. And so it's like, you can't even report on this fast enough because it's a constant barrage of like, okay, I've got to make an update, an update, an update. And now, because of this, we're seeing a group of senators who are like, okay, enough is enough. We need to have mandatory body cameras and an independent review of ICE's use of force policies. But where do you think that's going to go, Nick, unless the Democrats take back the House and Senate during the midterms?
Well, I don't know if this accountability is going to come as fast as we want it to. And in the name of, this, talking about in the spirit of like we can't report everything fast enough. I just didn't report about the stopping of, this pause and this memo that existed because I didn't believe it. And so
Mm,
I used my editorial discretion and said, look, even if this memo exists, there are others who've reported it out there. Sure, you could read it, but like I didn't have any faith that ICE was going to stop their traffic stops. I mean, this is what we saw almost immediately, like the next day or the day after. They're not listening to these memos. It's almost like we're fighting this propaganda war, Natalie, and these headlines they come out, and all of a sudden it's almost August, right? And we're reminded about what happened in January when people
mm,
forget in the interim of what, is never really stopped. Maybe if people stop paying attention and it was not necessarily on the Sunday shows or out there repeatedly, but you and I,
yeah.
we know this stuff never stopped. And we're seeing that now. That's the other consequence of this. There is a fire hose now. We're seeing this even just today. I mean, just before we started this, we're saying, man,
Mhm.
Monday is a really, really busy day. You have this attack in New York at
Yeah.
26 Federal Plaza. You have yet, another incident this morning here in Georgia in the metro Atlanta suburbs of this massive sweep going on. Meanwhile, you have this undercurrent of the surveillance state that really concerns the both of us as well.
Yeah.
This network and nexus that is spreading across America.
It's absolutely true. And I think that's the impact that independent journalism is having right now because a lot of the corporate media, now that they've been bought by the billionaire class, they're just not
Yeah.
reporting on this stuff with any sense of urgency or concern for the people that it's impacting. And the Colorado case in particular, I found to be interesting because it's put a spotlight back on the private prison companies like the GEO Group, which I know you've talked about extensively. Many Americans still don't really understand how much of the immigration detention center is being operated by private contractors. So, Nick, in your uncovering in your work, what role are you seeing that
Yeah.
these companies are playing, and who can hold them accountable since it's technically a private entity?
I mean, Congress, who appropriates the money, they can hold them accountable, and there should be every
Hmm.
single week a Democratic lawmaker or representative out there at one of these facilities knocking on the door to hold them accountable. Because yes, they can be held accountable, even though it seems as though they're just getting away with everything. They still need federal funds. They're you know dare I say, they're benefiting from the socialist part of America here. They're getting federal funding here. They're getting stipends here to exist, right? You and I, our taxpayer money is funding what
Hmm.
what Congress is appropriating to these facilities, so they can hold them accountable. Representative Mendoza was out there, when I was there at Delaney Hall, and to this point of what I saw in Colorado, I'm not surprised. In fact,
Yeah.
yesterday I was watching the live of my friend Matthew Wagner, who's a photojournalist, independent photographer, and then Chance,
Mhm.
a colleague of mine who was, in this. Coalition, so to speak. We were in this collective of independent journalists because you know how much we need support and fellowship.
Mhm.
He was out there and has been out there on the front lines. I happened to be watching his live. A Geo Group employee picked up a rock and threw it at him, right? And all he was doing was recording from a
Wow.
public sidewalk. He wasn't antagonizing, he wasn't saying anything. That's never going to make the traditional or mainstream news.
Right.
That's never going to be out there in a headline, but that's how Geo Group employees are acting. And when something violent does happen, look, it takes you and I to talk about this stuff because the Brandon Brooks charges with second-degree attempted murder and
Mm,
first-degree assault and unlawful possession of a concealed weapon, all that gets buried in page 2 of a random blog. I mean, it's just
mm,
they're getting more and more aggressive. They started getting aggressive in Delaney Hall. And it feels like that's sort of like what I was saying at the start of this, this conversation. It feels as though that's sort of manifested across the country, and they've just sort of lost any patience that they had left.
I agree. And I got to speak here as a woman. And I know there are women on listening right now watching us. And thank you to everybody who's watching. But I got to say this, the desperation that I'm seeing from ICE and the people working for them, for the GEO group, it's
Yeah.
giving high school energy of the guys that used to try to like snap my bra in the back of
Oh my
the
God.
classroom. It's giving like they couldn't talk to a girl and so they've decided to join ICE and make everyone's lives hell. Like this is the energy that we're getting. I used to say that was where like a lot of the cops came from, but now I'm like, I think that's where ICE is now coming from. It's this misogynistic, entitled boy who never grew up energy, and it's driving me insane because it's being manifested through
Yeah.
the new border czar, Tom Homan, because he said recently in an interview, which really tripped me out, that there will be more bloodshed. These are his words.
Crazy.
Unless Democrats stop criticizing ICE. I mean, this is an extraordinary statement. And I can't help but see how it's all wrapped up in this white supremacist, patriarchal like concept of who gets to have power and this incredible bully energy that I can only equate to how I experienced high school with so many dudes. And like, I just find it really fascinating that when we don't deal with the manosphere, this is where it leads. These guys
Right.
then join ICE. It
Yes.
trips me out.
And there's a through line all the way. We never
Yes.
leave the seventh grade. These guys are the same people that would be snapping the girls' bras for
Yes.
attention or pulling their hair because they like them but didn't know how to express themselves because they
Mm-hmm.
come from homes that are whatever it is, Like these are the same kinds of people where power corrupts absolutely. And
Yeah,
we're seeing it also. You're saying it manifested not only in Tom Homan's language, but in the actions of the
that's right.
individual agents out there in the field. I did
Mm-hmm.
a report again to go reference back to more my recent frontline reporting in Newark. They seem to be, the federal agents with DHS seem to be going after the most vulnerable. The most vulnerable included women
Mm-hmm.
or smaller
Mm-hmm.
men who are on the
Mm-hmm.
front line. And we know it's the chingonas out there. It's not just the chingonas with the microphones like you out, here on this platform. It's the people that are out there on the front line out there who have
100%.
been out there on the front line for months and months and months. And it's God bless the women because
Mm-hmm.
they're the ones that are truly leading the way in this movement. I sincerely mean that. And
Yeah.
it's them that are targeted by ICE agents deliberately. I don't even have to say it seems. It's part of a strategy that I've seen unfold. And so to your point, the language, yes, in someone like Tom Homan, the borders are at the top, but it's also the actions of the individual agents who are bullying women literally on the front line.
Mm-hmm. And just to kind of put a period at the end of that sentence, I
Yeah.
do a lot of commentary with my friend Jess Britvich, and we talk about the manosphere and the incel pipeline. And I want to make it clear that this all comes down to proximity to power. And there are a certain
Mm.
faction of white women, in particular MAGA adjacent or MAGA women, who think if I give them that power, I will then in exchange be protected. And I need you to understand, for any woman out there that is watching this, your proximity to their racism and their misogyny will not protect you, because the minute you step out of that line, they will then turn it on you, just like we're witnessing them turning on other women and attacking and bullying and physically assaulting and shooting women in the streets. Your womanness will not protect you, which is why I always say that we must be intersectional. We must align ourselves with people that do not look like us and do not have our lived experience, or we will sink or swim together.
It takes a coalition. It's solo el pueblo salva el pueblo. Only the people will save each other. It really does
Yes.
take a village and a coalition, sometimes of unexpected alliances, sometimes unlikely friends, right? Sometimes people where you gotta hopefully not plug your nose too much while you're fighting the good fight with them. We
Mhm.
saw that play out with data centers and Social Circle, where
Yep.
Trump voters who voted for the immigration policy were all of a sudden impacted by it because they had this 10,000 person proposed ICE facility, super
Mhm.
prison, coming their way. And they teamed up with the liberals who knew that it was just not the worst people, but it was also inhumane. And so these unlikely alliances, plugging your nose, it takes this village and coalition. But it really is, I think, I don't know, we kind of talked about this a little bit. I talked about a little bit the household. I have a son,
Mhm.
a young son, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it's not, man, maybe this is the liberal part of me as much as the conservative is. I believe in the family value and the nuclear structure, right? And like, I think me creating a good man in
Mm.
my son is telling him to respect women, respect their bodies. And it starts at 5. It starts not where I'm
That's
like
right.
smothering him with things that are like beyond his comprehension, but it's like, hey, if somebody tells you they don't want you to touch their bodies, you don't. It's not
Right.
somebody, it's not, it's like, I don't know.
Mhm.
It made me think about the grand platener of it all, where you have
Yeah.
these posts and these men in the manosphere are blaming women how they dress for their sexual assaults they experience. And really to land the plane on this, Natalie, I really think it all starts in like how we communicate to our young men, how
Yeah.
how they see the actions and leaders play out in front of them and the behaviors of the men around them.
Absolutely. And I think it's very important too, the way that you treat the women in your life, our children are watching. And so, yes, the words matter and the actions matter as well, right? Because it's one thing to say it, but if he sees you treating mom with love and kindness and respect, then he goes, "Oh, I guess that's the baseline." And the same thing if you have daughters as a man, that's your first image of
Yeah.
what a man is supposed to or not supposed to be to you. So it's fascinating how all of these things tie together. We can't remove the conversation around our identities from the political space because the body in and of itself is political. And I
True,
want to pivot
true.
here a little bit because we were talking earlier in the conversation around surveillance and you touched on it slightly just at the beginning. I
Yeah.
wanted to come back to this because flock um, is also a part of all of this, and that's what I mean by connecting the dots. So the debates about ICE aren't just about who they're arresting or who they're attacking. It's also about surveillance and who is being surveilled. We recently learned that police agencies in California that are using flock's safety automated license plate reader system to search people for attending anti-ICE protests. My friend Ben Camacho was on the show last week. He's another journalist, and he did a whole
I saw
expose
that.
on this. Really interesting. Nick. But these searches are raising new questions about whether technology intended to solve crimes is actually just being utilized to monitor constitutionally protected speech. And we're seeing that the LAPD has now canceled their engagement with Flock. Nick, talk a little bit about how
Yeah.
your own work sees this intersection around the surveillance state and the rise of violence with ICE.
I think the surveillance state is not inevitable, and that's what the headline
Thank you.
takeaway I think should be from Los Angeles and the
Hmm.
not so small win of LAPD for now canceling their contract with Flock. Flock is everywhere. It's almost kind of like this game of bingo that my wife and I play when we're out and about. The kids have now started to see it. I mean, I'm sure they think
Hmm.
daddy's a little crazy, but Flock cameras are everywhere, and they've sort of deflock.org, if you really want to see how not crazy I am, go to deflock.org. Type in your zip code and you will see all of the heat maps of the
Yep.
flock cameras that exist around you. And these are the same cameras that are being used by agencies like ICE to do their so called targeted enforcement. There's a reason why we saw an uptick of these incidents, of these targeted enforcement operations around Walmarts or Home Depots. It's because these flock cameras are put up under the premise of safety and law and order. They're
Mm-hmm.
funded, not so quietly, sometimes very quietly, by grants from these big Fortune 500 companies. The grants go to, for instance, the Atlanta Police Foundation, which sounds like a member or an extension officially of the APD. It's a for-profit agency or a third-party agency rather that gets money to support things like this under the premise of law and order. The data is then shared sometimes with ICE. It's not just to catch the bad guys. Sometimes homeowners associations are sold that this is just going to speed up people being caught that are breaking into their home or their cars. All of it sounds good on a very plain and simple, not critical thinking or using, hey, what could happen if this gets into the wrong hands? And I think that that's the real concern here that I'm seeing.
I appreciate that. And also, there's been a lot of misuse with police using these to stalk women.
God,
And that's
so
another,
much.
it's another issue. And once again, this all goes back to this culture that we were talking about. I also want to make a note, you guys, because we hear this safety. It's for your safety. Everything, they're very concerned with our safety as they're beating people in the streets. But, it's interesting because actually in
That
the
part.
United States, that part, violent crime, this is according to FBI data. Violent crime has dropped significantly, with overall crime decreasing roughly by 9.3% from 24 to 25. To me, if you're trying to sell a community on, hey, we're here to protect you with safety, the world's a scary place. And then I'm like, let me just do a little Google search. And I'm like, well, that's interesting because it's fallen 9%. So try again. To me, the math ain't math in here. And what this really is about, in my opinion, is not about public safety or people's safety. It's about protecting their capital. It's about protecting their businesses, because we know police actually don't have anything to do with the idea of public safety. The Supreme Court said they're not responsible for an individual's safety, but they are responsible for protecting buildings. And I find that really sinister and really fascinating. And I just wanted to add that for everybody.
Protecting and serving, right? I mean, it's like protect and serve. That's what we learn about the police, but somehow they're focusing on the enforcement part. We feel that more than
Mm-hmm.
ever. Somehow violent crime stats are going down. It's nowhere near what we grew up in. I grew
Mm-mm.
up in the 90s. And you know what? While violent crime stats are going down and we're being sold on this premise that it's more dangerous than ever out there because of these fucking illegals,
Mm-hmm.
you know what stat is going up? You know what's at an all-time high is record homelessness. Is we
Yes.
have nearly 1 million people every night that spend on the streets, more than 700,000 that are living without a home. And that's not
Mm-hmm.
counting the people that are couch surfing or who are chronically homeless, people who don't have a place to stay, or maybe not your textbook definition. That number is going up. Violent crime numbers are going down. Homelessness, Americans, people like you and me. Why? Because despite what you see on CNBC and all this, what they're selling us that the middle class is strong, no, it's not. And
No.
we at the end of the day are just a product in this consumer market. And once we stop paying our way in to this unconditional citizenship that we have with conditional membership, once we can't pay anymore, we're
Mhm.
thrown out on the streets. We don't have a name. People don't look at us. And then they fucking blame you for being homeless, even though the
That's right.
system, right? Because it's simpler. You didn't try hard enough. This is America. You should work hard. No, the system is broken. To your
Mhm.
point, Natalie, it's because they want to protect their capital
Yeah.
in every layer of this. And we're here to highlight it.
But don't worry, Nick, because there's a growing private prison sector and they're more than willing to take the homeless off our hands.
I mean,
Woo!
I'm laughing, but it's like, what else are we going to do? Because
N-
it's going to be the undesirable American next. You
mhm.
know what's
And
going to happen,
And
right?
that's why we always say this proximity to power, this will shift,
Oh
this
my
paradigm
gosh.
shifting, right? Because at first they were like, okay, we'll go after the rapists and the murderers that are also illegal. Okay. Then it was, well, we're just going after anyone that's illegal. Okay. Well, now we're going after people that have green cards. Uh-huh. And now it's, well, you protested against ICE, so we're gonna shoot you. Oh
I'm going to
my.
share this
So
story with you. We talk about the
please.
undesirable American, like being next. There's already stories, and I've, need to report this out a little further, but I've already talked to the individual who was homeless. He didn't have an
Mm-hmm.
ID, and
Mm-hmm.
he was mistakenly put in ICE custody, not once, but twice, because he used a fake ID that sounded too ethnic, and they were more than willing to keep him in custody while they figured it out. And he didn't know because he's adopted, Natalie. He told me, and look, this guy's got mental health problems. He had
Sure.
substance abuse problems. He was very rigorously honest about that. But he
Mm-hmm.
told me he didn't know whether or not he was documented because he was adopted and living on the
Mm.
street since he was a teenager. He didn't have that paperwork. And the system here, the system that's meant to protect and serve us, was more than willing to take him into custody and put him in these subhuman conditions where he was for months. He was eventually released, he told me. He got a hold of his paperwork, he got his real name, and then he was taken into custody, though, again, because they didn't believe him. And so he got processed pretty quickly on that second go around. But the fact is that there are cases, countless cases of not only US citizens, permanent
Yeah.
residents, legal residents. They don't fucking care if you do it the
No.
right way. Because guess what? Even if you're doing it the right way, in some cases, that leaves you vulnerable and gives a heads up to the government that you're in this legal purgatory. Because again, to your point, Natalie, it's not about doing it the right way. It's about people protecting their capital. It's all of this through line, and none of it is simple, and all of it is complicated intentionally.
Thank you for sharing that. And I used to be a social worker and I worked with a lot of unhoused
Wow.
populations, and a lot of them, we don't realize how many people are working full time and living in their cars.
The working
There's
homeless,
this
right?
working homeless, there's this mythology around this idea that there's a lot of freeloaders, and the true freeloaders of this nation are the billionaire class and the corporatists who are stealing our wages every year, year on year. So I say if someone is unhoused, we need to provide them the supports to get them to a safe place, because without housing, you can't work on health, you can't work on employment, substance abuse. None of it matters. The best thing we can do for our communities is to make sure that everyone has a safe place to call home each night. And
And this
really,
has existed for a long time, this homeless crisis.
yes,
One of those tools has been effective, and that is housing first. That's what
yes,
people bipartisan can agree on. And our Secretary of HUD right now is doing the exact opposite and saying you need to earn this. And so
mhm,
people who are already portions or the most vulnerable are being told you need to become stable or you lose everything. And they're already on the precipice of going into that pit of despair. I mean, it just like the numbers of homeless people are going up and they're
yeah,
pulling the funding away that works when like
mhm,
70% of the people that get the funding according to HUD stats are children or elderly.
yeah,
And they're doing the exact opposite thing in this country. All of this stuff is happening while they like do the shiny object. I know so much about this right now. It's on the tip of my tongue because this is the latest installment of what we're doing in our three-part
mhm,
series with Theorem Media. People are the product, and we have a very special report coming out, a 15-minute report with Theorem Media, all about that, about how
mm,
this is the through line: private equity in healthcare, private prisons in ICE. And you, as a citizen, you're a product until you can't stop paying into this system, and then you're out on the streets. And the system
yeah.
just makes it worse.
Absolutely, and thank you for sharing all of that around what you have coming up. As we wrap up, you guys, I just want to reframe this, because
Yeah.
this country loves to talk a lot about working hard and sort of being punitive and punishing people if they don't do enough. The fastest growing group of people being homeless are women over the age of 50. And what's interesting to me is we're trying to sell this narrative around the traditional wife. A lot of them were traditional wives, and they end up in a situation where their social security isn't enough, and they've been thrown out because they ended up divorced or their husband died and they didn't have the economic equipment at hand to sustain themselves. So this narrative, we've got to stop with this idea that you have to earn a place in the world. You are here. That is enough. And you should have the basics, especially in the richest nation in the world. Nick, if
Amen.
people want to learn more about your incredible work, I know you are a busy man and I don't want to keep you too much longer. And I always appreciate you showing up for me and for all of us.
That
Where can they
doorbell was
go?
my family coming home. That alarm,
See?
people
Oh,
coming through the back.
perfect
Did you?
timing.
If you
Perfect
want to
timing.
catch up with my work, you go to nickvalencianews.com. Thank you so much for inviting me back on your platform. I realized also we connected because you came to the Online News Association
That's
conference and
right.
heard me speak at the main stage. And I was like, oh, I follow you on social media right away. And I was like, this is a great perspective. I love what you do. Any chance I get, I bring your name up in rooms that you're not in, Natalie. And I can't wait
Oh,
to do more stuff like this. I truly believe in an era where independent journalism really matters. People are starting to support. There is still, I think, merit in the argument that we don't know who to trust. And
yeah.
that's why I talk, because people have started to trust me on a big
Mhm.
platform.
Mhm.
You're building a huge audience, and so, like, I don't know, I know that you support me and I support you just the same. So thank you so much, Nana. I really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you letting me come up and shake your hand and, like, push through the crowd that was trying to talk to you. I'm like, "Nick, you don't know me, but I really like what you just said up there on stage." So, yeah, you guys being a pushy Italian girl, it sometimes works, you know? So,
I
Nick,
love your
thank you.
journalism and your approach. Keep being a pushy Italian, keep speaking up against really it is a system of white supremacy. It is a system
Yes.
of misogyny. I
Yes.
have to constantly be reminded that as much as my community is being persecuted and in the eye right now of the target, women for hundreds of years have been
Mhm.
the eye, no matter the community, right? And
Mhm.
and I think
Mhm.
about I don't know. I think about just how many things that women have had to go through. I think about myself having a young daughter. I talked about my young son, the
Mhm.
tools that we can instill in our next generation to make sure that this has hope and that,
Yeah.
as hard of a time as it is right now, there are people like Natalie and I that are out there that are fighting the good fight. So thank you to all of you guys watching. Please watch this on replay, share it. Share Natalie's work, share my work, nickvalencianews.com. I got to run, go be family man because we're superheroes in so
Go
many
do it.
capacities. All
Bye,
right.
everybody.
Talk to you guys later.
Take care.